Welcome back to another exciting episode of Meanwhile Back on the Podcast. I'm Frank McGuire.
I'm Seba Mir.
I'm Christina Dudumas.
I'm Jeff Mack.
Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you once again for joining us. How is everybody out there? It's wild times right now. Wild times. So much going on. But for the next 60 or so minutes, you're safe in here. Consider this your escape pod. Get it? See what I did there? For all of you out there who make us your weekly escape, thank you again for joining us and obviously for your continued support. But maybe this is your first time tuning in. Maybe you found us through our Nintendo Switch giveaway that just ended, actually. And this is your first time tuning in. Let me tell you about who we are and what our show is about. We are a fandom culture, speculative fiction loving collective, and each week we will share our brand of raw, hard-hitting commentary, news, film, and game reviews from all your most beloved corners of fandom. Now, we rarely see eye to eye on these things, and to be honest, we designed it that way. However, no matter what we disagree on, each of us champion open, nuanced, and thoughtful conversation when discussing our favorite made-up shit. Meanwhile is your one-stop shop for everything a growing fan person needs without any of those nasty preservatives. Now, if you like this episode and don't want to miss the next one, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. With that said, on today's show, it's another edition of Between Pointed Ears, and we are going to be getting a little introspective on today's episode. It seems that there are some people out there who call themselves fans, but are more about the hateration than celebration, and we have a lot to say about that.
Like, I've seen the stories created with those types of sims. They create like dark, like.
I mean, Sim always
Yeah.
gets dark. Sim's like literally playing that game. To me, like I always stop playing that game with like an existential crisis of like, am I a Sim?
So I feel like that game gets really dark.
The Bell Let's Talk thing?
Yeah, like, be
Yeah.
cognizant of the people around you, right? Like, try and keep a radar out for people who may be at risk or, need somebody to talk to. I think we almost need to do that in fandom. Like, I almost feel like we need to, like, find these people online and be like, hey, man, like, why are you throwing all this vitriol at this person you don't even know? Like, do you need a hug? Like, can I help you out? Like, can I send you my favorite comic book to read? Like, just...
I definitely wouldn't offer.
I don't
them a
know,
hug,
man.
But yeah, what is going on?
Meanwhile, back on the podcast, four colossal nerds named Saba, Chris, Christina, and Frank have set out to take on a great darkness that has enveloped the world of fandom with their powers of common sense and the strength to take on even the most butthurt Twitter mobs and insufferable comment section trolls. They fight for truth, objectivity, and nuance in the conversation and debate over fictional made-up shit.
Yeah, so on today's episode, like I said at the top here, it's going to be a little bit of an introspective journey for all of us. We're going to be holding up a mirror to us, to you, to everyone who calls themselves a fan. Why, you say? Well, because some people out there aren't exactly being the best representation of fandom. It's almost the antithesis of fandom. And I really want to try and nail down where this is coming from and what's really behind it, because it would be nice if it changed. It's not doing anybody any favors, and it's just making us look like it's making our community look bad. So off the top, I wanted to start with, do you guys remember? Because the reason I'm going to bring this up is because it's really the first time where the fans got really any say at all in the narrative direction of an actual character. Like, it was almost like it was interactive. It was, it was real time. It was, it was real time for the times. It's not real time in a sense of today's scope of time, but it's real time back then. And I'm talking about when DC put up that 900 number and basically gave the fans the opportunity to either kill Jason Todd or save Jason Todd. We all remember that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it from memory because I wasn't born yet, but I know that was like very monumental in terms of, part of me wished I was alive because I would have saved him, because I'm a sucker for that. I just can't let someone die. But yeah, I do agree. That's probably the first time we've ever really seen fans really get a say in anything, which is really funny when you think about now. But
yeah, they gave the fans a 900 number and said, listen, you guys can make the decision whether you want to kill Jason Todd or you want to save Jason Todd, because Jason Todd got a lot of hate mail. And that was the way that fans talked to the comic book writers back in the day. You would write a letter to Marvel or DC, and it would actually go into the pages of the comic book. So, you'd try and, if you wrote a letter, you'd want to go and pick up the issue and see if your letter got published. But that was really the only way that anybody could communicate with these creators. Right now, you can communicate with them in an instant. Like just today, like we just did that interview with J.M. DeMatteis, right? And I just put up the Daredevil video of our tease for Daredevil. Well, not tease. The episode's been out for a while, but our audiogram for Daredevil Part 1. And, JM liked the tweet and reposted it for us or retweeted it for us. So the landscape and the degree of communication that's available to us now is nothing like it was back then. And I think that has a lot to do with where we kind of sit right now in terms of this almost landscape we've created for ourselves, And I just wanted to bring that up is because it really is the first time where fans actually got the opportunity to play an interactive role in the fate of a character.
Right. And I would argue, I would just argue that it was sort of what the writers wanted, and it was highly orchestrated as well.
100%.
So although fans got to vote, I think that the writers already kind of had in mind that they were going to kind of sideline Jason Todd, because in Batman 428, which is the issue that got published after the contest on the 1-900 number, he ends up in a coma anyway. So in one version, there's two versions of the comic. In one version, he ends up in a coma, and in the other one, he dies. So no matter what, he's out of the picture. So fans sort of got to say, but not really. Like, I think they were going to sideline the character regardless of what the fans said. It was just kind of a marketing tactic.
Doesn't seem like sidelining, though.
Yeah, it's not as definite or final, right?
No, it actually is. It definitely is sidelining. Like, that's literally what they would do to a soap character back in the day. Like,
and then they come back looking completely different.
But
I will say, this is my little argument, and we're going to talk about this in bigger detail, I think. But I do think that, since fans were given that chance to then, and the hate for Jason Todd, I know at that time was quite large. A lot of people did not like him. But I do wonder if they had this avenue that we have now, would we just not see this done quicker? And we can talk about examples, and I know you want to talk about the landscape as well. But I do wonder that as well, if they were given more of that sort of access, because they were probably getting a lot of hate mail. But imagine if they had the internet or something similar to that back then, and they could just go online. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And they could screen which comments got published and which ones didn't. I'm sure there was lots of stuff that was just really out there and just got tossed in the trash too.
Well, I don't think anybody was levying death threats against any of the Batman writing staff back then.
I will say, I will say the vocabulary that the fans have these days is a lot wider, possibly.
Wider, yeah.
I mean,
it's interesting that we're defining that as wider, eh? It's like,
not wider, but so, and we're gonna get into some of these too. I mean, we've seen a lot over the years. I think we're going to talk about, like, one that I always remember is the controversy with The Last Jedi. Just the movie itself, and then also, the hate that Kelly Marie Tran faced, which is, to me, like, you can not like a character, and that is totally fine to not like a character. It's very different to go to her Instagram page and harass her.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I would say we probably didn't have the same access to the actors, but I don't know. I wonder if they would have received...
instantaneous access to the people who play our favorite characters, write our favorite stories, make our favorite games, direct our favorite movies. And I think that's something that, we have too much power as a fan base now. It's insane. It's getting to the point where I think it's almost, there needs to be a measure put in the middle to kind of curb this at some point. But sorry, Christina, you were saying?
I was just going to say, I think we don't know if they would have received death threats in the past. Like, I think it's possible. I wouldn't go so far to say as it's never happened in the past.
I don't think it. Okay, so as we move down through this conversation, I'm going to make a lot of points that's going to point to something that's very systemic and very specific to this time period.
Okay.
Because I think that the internet has a lot to do with it.
I agree.
I really do.
I think it's definitely like amplifying the voices.
It's
but yeah.
amplifying. Not only is it amplifying, but it's allowing people to find like-minded people because they can find them in any corner of the world, right? Like you can be, okay, let me give you an example, right? Like if you're a soccer fan, right? Like how many fucking football clubs are there in the Premier League? There's like 152 or some shit. I can't remember. But like if you like a very obscure team, right? It's hard for you to go out in your hometown and find somebody who likes the same team that you do. Right?
Oh yeah, and if you
but
live
it's
in
super
Europe,
easy.
you'll get you could get threatened or beaten up in the streets if you lived in Europe.
Yeah,
so.
but that's not the point I'm trying to make though. What I'm trying to say is that if you get on the internet, you can find somebody who likes your team in the snap of a finger. You just go to their Facebook page and you start talking to somebody who is a member of that same Facebook page, right? You can find people to reinforce your ideas and your perceptions and your notions very quickly.
Oh yeah, there's most likely a Reddit forum for everything too. You can find everything on Reddit.
Exactly. Like if this podcast ever gets big enough, there's going to be a Reddit page where it's going to be like, you know,
I hate Frank.
Exactly. There'll be an I hate Frank hate Frank Reddit page. There will be.
That'll make your day.
No, it
the
won't.
minute that happens, you'll be so excited.
No, I won't. No, I won't.
No, it won't.
No.
No, I do agree that, like, yes, obviously, you know, it's not the exact same. And, you know, the one example I just brought up, it's, you know, separating, and this is the thing I go back and forth with, because I love passion among it. Like,
Me
I'm
too.
passionate about
I love passionate
so many
people.
things.
Yeah.
And I think that is amazing, but there is a fine line to walk here. And the scary thing, I think, as well with these creators is that, you know, you can be creating something really great and amazing, but if you do one wrong thing or something that's seen as wrong, you know, everyone can kind of turn on you just as quickly, you know, which is also very scary. And for me, I don't think I'd notice this as much because I don't have a Twitter. I think if I had Twitter, I'd probably, like, some of the stuff I just see like headlines of. So I'm like, oh, okay. So in my head, I don't like, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree, I do not think it's a majority, but I do think it's enough people for there to be a worry about it. I think if I had Twitter, I'd probably like go crazy. Like, I just can't.
Yeah, Saba, you can handle Twitter. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Like, Twitter's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I have friends
For my peace of mind, I just don't.
No, I think it's the best bet for you for sure. It just, like, you know, you're too sweet and too kind to even get into that Twitter muck. Okay, you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be a part of that.
I love it. I'm one of those people that just like sitting on the sidelines of some of the conversations.
Oh, you're one of the ones that throws up those popcorn gifs of like
Yeah,
the guy eating
yeah.
popcorn.
Oh, but I
Nice.
do love a good popcorn gift.
Yeah.
I will say, this is what I use Twitter for. Is usually when I'll go on to the Explore page because they have trending news. So I'm like, oh, it's like all
Right.
And then I also for like basketball games, because can I tell you, like, basketball Twitter is so funny.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this,
That's
like
good.
especially during like the Clippers and anyway, we're getting different topic right there, but there is like a good and bad use for it. But I do think that, like, yeah, like you said, you can contact anyone directly. You can, you know, people, you know, can hear you, which I think is really good and awesome. Like, there's okay, an example I wanted to bring up where it was like good and bad was the Game of Thrones ending. So bad thing, Game of Thrones ending, people freaked out. There was a petition to do the whole series again. People were like freaking out, you know, all of that.
Did you sign that?
Pardon?
Did
No,
you
I
sign
didn't
it?
sign it because I was like, some people.
I didn't sign it.
Oh,
didn't
I
sign
was
it.
in a bar when that episode was happening, and the bartenders are like huge fans of it, and they had set up like a little TV in the corner, and they were like huddled over it, just like watching this. And like I'm not really a fan of Game of Thrones, so I don't know. I just caught an episode here and there, whatever. But watching them watch the episode was like really hilarious.
I was watching with Chris, and who was on this podcast, and he looked like he was gonna punch someone. Like, he looked so mad throughout the whole
Yeah.
thing. So there was this, but like the fans went like really crazy. They really went after D, and to a point, I can understand holding them responsible, being like, hey, like, you know, you kind of dropped the ball here. But I do think it was an overkill in terms of like the amount of hate they were getting. But the plus side is a lot of these fans, or maybe other fans, raised money for the charities of their favorite actors. So like Emilia Clarke's Mu, I think they raised over 130,000 American dollars, and about like $53,000 for a charity that Kit Harington supported. So there was like this good side of that, and if we could have more of that, that would be great. I do think there's a lot of examples, and I think we're going to go into that are quite the opposite of that, though.
Yeah, no. So, I made a short list of incidents where I kind of wanted to draw some lines, right? So the Kelly Marie Tran thing is definitely coming from a place of hatred, of misogyny, of bigotry. So is the Anna Diop Starfire thing. To an extent, I'm not going to agree with everybody who said, hey, that's not my Starfire, because I wanted an alien Starfire too. I didn't care what the actress was underneath the alien makeup, but I wanted an alien Starfire. Sorry, but like, I'm not trying to minimize Anna's portrayal of the character. I think she did an amazing job. She's an amazing actress, but I wanted an alien Starfire. And I know a lot of people who wanted an alien Starfire. It wasn't about her being an African American. It wasn't about her background. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about the fact that she wasn't an alien. And there was literally no nods to her alien physiology other than her talking about being from another planet. And I've seen that movie 1,000 times, and I'm bored of it. So I wanted to see a physical alien come into the world of DC and then have that alien interact with the characters around them, just like they did in Supergirl. There's lots of visible aliens in Supergirl. It was an entire fucking storyline about visible aliens. It was an allegory for immigration and for people who were trying to find a home in this foreign country. And they could have played that up with the Starfire character, but they didn't. So
yeah, and I agree with that. It's not Anna's fault. It's the directors and the writers. They kind of wanted to go in a different direction, and that's what she was told to do, and she did that, and they picked her to do that.
Yes, and that's another baseline I want to set, because it really bothers me that people are behaving like they don't understand, like they think that the actresses and the actors have any say over what they're doing with their characters. Other than how they deliver lines, that's pretty much it, how they deliver lines.
And I thought she did a good job of that. Like, I thought she kind of fit the world that they created, but I agree, it's not, I wanted to see an alien Starfire as well. Like, I love a lot of the personality traits of the original Starfire are just gone.
Yeah, they were minimized, for sure.
That's definitely not Anna's fault.
They were minimized.
Yeah. And that, I think, are like, we're talking about characters and casting, and people can always have conversations about that. And then the sucky part is, like, she had to, like, disable her Instagram account because people, like, under the guise of, oh, we care about casting, we're just using it to be racist.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, you know what I mean? It's, like, a line that is just being, crossed all the time. And that's, same with Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah, but you can tell the difference, right? You can tell the difference between somebody who has a legitimate criticism about casting to somebody who is actually looking to stoke the fires of hate, right? Like, Kelly Marie Tran had some very obvious commenters on her Instagram talking about, her weight, her ethnicity, her, these kind of things. These are very obvious signs of, like, I don't like you in Star Wars because you're an Asian American, blah, 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 right? And the same thing for Anna Diop. Right? She had to deal with people not liking the fact that she was African American, and
also with her body size too. People did complain about that as well.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that.
And it's too bad because both actresses could have had a moment. They were in maybe like the spotlight moment in their career, and they didn't get to fully take advantage of that spotlight because of all the psychological trauma that all these trolls were causing for them. So that's unfortunate.
Well, not only that, they had to quit. Like Kelly Marie Tran quit Instagram, like Saba was saying. Like, she quit it. She shut the whole thing down. Like, she loses her entire PR operation. Like, that's her entire public relations mechanism, right? She loses that because somebody doesn't want to see her in the role.
But not somebody. Many people.
Sorry, many people.
Overly opinionated people who are just allowed to say whatever they want, right?
Yeah. But, that's the other to the sword is, like, where do you draw the line between free speech and hate speech? And I'm of the school of thought is, if you're not trying to incite violence, then I think free speech, like, if somebody, left a message on Kelly Marie Tran's Instagram and said, I think you're a horrible actress. I've seen you in something before and I don't want to see you again. That's a criticism that I can't really argue with, right? But if somebody says something along the lines of, that specifically says something about her ethnicity or the way she looks or her appearance or whatever, those are things that become very muddy. And
that's targeted, like at something other than her acting.
Exactly.
And I was on the receiving end of one hateful message when I was in a volunteer leadership position. I'll tell you, it ruined my whole week. I was angry and sad and like scared for a whole week, all because of this one message that someone who probably doesn't even live in this country sent to me because I was a woman in a leadership position in security. Like, it's crazy, which I fully like escalated it as high as I could escalate it and made all the complaints. But yeah, it was just like shocking that in today's day and age that I could even receive that. And yeah, so I can't even imagine what it's like to get like hundreds or thousands of these kinds of messages.
Yeah, especially when you think of Kelly Marie Tran, because, like, people are like, you have to have thick skin and this, but, like, it doesn't matter how much thick skin you have. And I'll say, like, yeah, if they did just comment on her acting, that'd be one thing. But even that, like, for someone, because there's people who do that, who, like, go to celebrities' pages and say, you're a horrible actor. Like, I've never felt the need to, like, spit hate to a person. Like, like, I can think maybe with my friends, I'm like, yeah, that person's acting wasn't the greatest. Like, there's some movies I'm like, yeah, that really freaking sucked. Like, I was like, I'm not going to go to this person's page just to tell them how horrible I thought their acting was. Like, like I wouldn't even feel any joy in that. So I do wonder what the mindset. Like, I always think people who, especially the ones who leave really negative comments, I always think there must be something that they're dealing with, like, internally. Because I feel like, it's a reflection of who you are, like how you act, how you act in this world, how you speak, and the things you say, it reflects like your inside. So if you're kind of spewing negativity, I assume there's a lot of that going in on the inside. I mean, I'm not like a therapist or anything.
But these people probably should seek help.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I think there's a lot to that. I really do. Like, what person who is leading, a fulfilling life where they're happy and they're they're living their purpose, what type, like, that person doesn't have the time to go on the internet and tell some random actor how they felt about their performance season 4 episode 2. You know what I mean? They don't have that time, and they don't really, like, that's very low on the priority list as far as what they're going to do with their time. You know what I'm saying? And I think it says a lot about somebody who actually pushes that to the top of their priority list and says, this is what I'm going to do today. This is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go out and I'm going to tell somebody that I don't even know, I have no personal relationship with, have no idea of what their character is about, what they do with their life outside of what I get to see on television. I'm going to go and tell them exactly what I think of them. And it's going to be, it's going to be hateful. And it's like, I don't get those people. They make no sense to me at all. And maybe it's because of the generation I'm from, but I don't give a fuck what anybody says about me on the internet. I don't care. Like, you could jump on my Facebook page tomorrow and say things about me, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you put in my comment section. You don't know me. You have no reference to who I am as a person at all, other than maybe if it's something from this podcast. Other than hearing my voice and hearing my opinion or hearing my thoughts, you know nothing about me. I could be the greatest person in the world. I could be out there feeding the fucking homeless and, doing good all over the world. And you will never know that. So,
but those things don't matter to these people.
I know.
I think it's, to Saba's point, like they're just so obsessed with their own negative thoughts that
I know.
And it's like their own world. They're obsessed with their own world. They don't care what's happening.
And that's the problem. Yeah. And that's the problem. I don't like, when Belle does mental health week and they try and encourage you to like be
the Belle Let's Talk thing.
Yeah. Like, be cognizant of the people around you, right? Like, try and keep a radar out for people who may be at risk or, need somebody to talk to. I think we almost need to do that in fandom. Like, I almost feel like we need to like find these people online and be like, hey man, like, why are you throwing all this vitriol at this person you don't even know? Like, do you need a hug? Like, can I help you out? Like, can I send you my favorite comic book to read? Like,
I definitely wouldn't offer them a hug, man. But yeah, what is going on?
But
Frank
no,
is
like, I
giving free
almost
hugs,
feel like,
guys.
sorry?
Frank's giving free hugs.
I am giving free hugs. I'm always giving free hugs.
I mean, this is
But
not the
I
time
almost-
to be doing that, Frank. But
That's true. Sorry,
with a,
guys.
with a mask on.
I'll wear my mask. I love my mask. But no, seriously, like something has to change, because not only do we have people, racially targeting people and targeting people because of their gender, but we have people actually levying death threats at people for the stupidest things too. Like, and I'll give you a great example. They recently changed the facial modeling for the Peter Parker character in Marvel's Spider-Man game. And the guy who did that got death threats. And the guy doesn't even look that much different than the original Peter Parker.
yeah, I have some thoughts. So I had to look into this because I did see that headline, but I didn't really look into it until before this to see what it was. And so some people were saying they didn't like it. I do think that is a minority, but he did get that. He was saying, this is what he said. I think his name is Brian Intihar, if that's how you pronounce it. He said, to our Spidey fans, I totally appreciate your passion, but sending me threatening notes that you will hunt you down and we will find you, fix this now. So here, I'm not giving these people any pass, but there's also like this language where people be like, I'm going to hunt you down. Like, I don't really know if that was like a serious, but either way, it is a ridiculous reaction.
But
and
even
one thing
to
I
care
do,
that much, even
Yeah.
to care that much. Like,
yeah, I
God
I don't know.
damn.
That's not a thing to even, maybe some people thought, can I tell you something? I feel like some people thought he was cuter that way. Like, maybe that's what it is. Like, I don't really know. There was like one
He
comment
does look
saying,
more cartoony now.
pardon?
He does look more cartoony now, though.
Yeah, there was
Who
some
cares?
comments around
Jesus
that, or that he looks
Christ.
younger than Miles would in the thing. So there was
Yeah.
like, I was like, okay, you can talk about that, but it is a ridiculous thing. Like, because the reason I didn't really look into it till today was because I saw the article and was like swiped it, because I was like, this is dumb. Like, this is not a thing. No one should be mad about
Yeah,
this.
no, it's
I did look into it a bit more too, because I was having trouble wrapping my head around this one. I'm like, yeah, what? It's like two guys who almost look the same. And then I did find a picture, and the one guy has more like age lines, and like he looks a little bit more weathered, and apparently that's more in line with the
like,
story.
sure.
So I don't know, but maybe Jeff, it sounds like you maybe played the game. Like, do you know if that's true? If the story
No,
kind of fits somebody who looks like they have a bit more wear and tear.
he looks
Oh,
more
okay.
gritty and like more wear and tear in the original. He looks very cartoony and like well-rounded and more colorful. But like, to me, honestly, it doesn't
Who
matter.
cares though? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, he's Spider-Man. He wears a mask anyways.
Like, I
He
don't know
wears
why
a
people are so
fucking
obsessed with the way
mask
Peter
anyway.
Parker looks like. Are you playing Spider-Man to play
Jesus.
Peter, or are you playing Spider-Man for Spider-Man? So that in itself confused the hell out of me, right?
Yeah, I'm all about that
I didn't
Peter.
get-
My
Oh,
favorite part of the
amazing
game
Jeff,
was
that's a
when you're
whole other
Peter.
episode.
Yeah.
Jeff, that's a whole other episode where we talk about how we get sidelined with these other characters doing
Yeah.
stupid ass missions. Oh my God. Have to talk about that at some point. Anyways, so yes, guys, like, I don't know if anybody out there is listening to this and you're one of these people, why? Just stop. Seriously, it doesn't matter what you send out into the world. It's not gonna change it. The guy's not gonna go, oh, you know what? I just spent fucking, $85,000 doing this remodel. Let me go back and fix that for you. It just is.
Well, okay, it did work for Sonic the Hedgehog, and that is something
It
I'm
did work for
very
Sonic
happy
the
about.
Hedgehog. It did work for Sonic the Hedgehog.
Because that
Good
other
point.
Sonic
Good
was
point.
just, I was not out there, giving any hate, but I understood why they were freaking out.
But I feel like he was still in a draft
man.
format when they first
so
released
weird.
him anyway, so they were gonna make more changes anyway.
I don't know.
No,
It
the
seemed-
trailer came out.
Yeah, that was pretty
Oh.
final. The weird teeth thing and the very
Oh, okay.
human-like Sonic, super
Yeah.
creepy.
It was super.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move this along because we got a couple more notions I want to explore here. But before we move on to the next idea I wanted to discuss, did you guys know The Boys season 2 got review bombed because they didn't release the whole season up front on Prime?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sucks. I don't like that because
It's
that's a good
so
show.
dumb.
It sucks to give
has-
it bad
Yeah.
reviews.
It has
for
nothing
that.
to do with the show itself, like at all. So like,
Exactly.
like it makes no sense.
I
Okay, sorry.
personally hate that too, but then they're gonna make it so that there's not a season 3, and apparently
Exactly.
season 2 is really good. Like,
Exactly. Do you know what happens when you like poorly review a show? The producers and the studio, they hear about this shit and they might make a decision you won't be happy with. So just
Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't review bomb shit.
That's the
Like,
thing. So that happens actually. So that happened with a book series I'm reading. There's a book series I love called King Killer Chronicles, and the first book came out 2009. The second one came out 2011. Third one is not out yet, but it's on Goodreads. It already like it has so many one-star ratings just because like it hasn't come out yet and people are really mad. There's one that's really funny that was like, I'm so angry at you. I am going to buy this book, but then I will never buy anything you ever make again because it's
God.
taking forever. So it kind of
Oh my
reminded
God.
me of that. Like they're giving it 1-star reviews when it's not out yet. And yeah,
Wow.
it's annoying because like you want the book to come out,
Mhm.
but you know, fantasy writers love to take their sweet time. So
That's so spoiled and entitled. I think that is saying a lot about our generation. The fact that's how we react to
Exactly.
things.
but it has been 9 years since this is from someone who's been waiting for this book for a while.
Fuck me.
But I do like I wouldn't go and give it a 1-star review. But part of
Yeah.
me is like, what are you? Whenever he says he's doing something else, I'm like, should you not be writing the book right now?
Hilarious.
Which is again like a weird thing. But I agree with you that especially with a good series like that, and hopefully
Yeah.
the producers know that and take that into account, and like
Hopefully.
they can do something with the rating system there. But
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, so the next thing I wanted to explore is I'm a huge Eminem fan. I've always been a huge Eminem fan. And I don't like what's happened with the co-opting of this stan thing. Okay? Like, how did we get from being fans to stans? Why has this kind of fan been like why has this been normalized and popularized? I don't get it, because as I understood, Stan was basically a fucking sociopath, psychopath who writes Eminem letters, doesn't get the response in time, and ends up killing his girlfriend and himself in a car and drove into a lake. And
is that what Stan comes from?
what?
I thought it came from Stalker
No.
Fan. Like I thought people for the place because the first time I ever heard Stan
Wow.
was when I was into K-pop years ago.
You were today years old when you learned that Stan is from Eminem.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought because the first time I heard about it was in like K-pop, and you're like you stan things or you're standing. I just thought it meant Stalker Fan.
I
It
actually
is a
just
stalker
Googled
fan, but it
it,
started with
and
Eminem.
it has like a origin in both.
No, I think trust me, it's
Yeah,
from
it's
Eminem.
actually related to
Like
both.
all the
Interesting.
definitions that I found is it comes from Eminem. Like the Stan song, because it's about an obsessed fan. And
Yeah, it's a stalker fan. It's still a
sure,
stalker
but
fan.
but
Mhm.
the point is that this level of fandom has been popularized and normalized. And I think it's gross. Like,
I don't know if gross
Mhm.
is the word I would use.
I listen, man, I think that there's a barrier you don't cross as a fan. Okay?
But I think this is what's your definition? Because here's the thing. I think this is my differentiate, like how I differentiate the two
Sure.
between fan and stan. When someone says like, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of this," I assume they're like a casual fan. So if someone's like, "I am a fan of Harry Potter," they'll be like, "Oh yeah, they were whatever." But when someone says I stan Harry Potter, I'm like, "Oh, I know you. Like you are me." Like you know what I mean? And maybe that's because of the people I interact with. And like in terms of fandom, like I said, I don't really go on Twitter, so maybe that's why I'm avoiding a lot of it. But usually when I, and back in, this is gonna relate back to my K-pop days. I don't know why I'm whispering it into my mic, but I did. I don't listen anymore, but back when I was in high school, I used to listen to a lot, and that was like really popular there. But there was a weird thing about standing as well, because like people would, protect their person that they were a fan of, like on all fronts, to the point where it became like, okay, if they did something wrong, they completely bypass it. So there was bad stuff there as well. But that's how I kind of see it. But I do understand that it probably is more morphed on Twitter than it is in my daily life when I say I stand things.
Yeah, no, Saba, I think this also has a lot to do with your perception of Stan, the meaning behind it. Because like you just said that your definition is stalker fan. My definition is this psychopath in Eminem's song called Stan, who basically, like I said, kills his girlfriend and kills himself because he's so obsessed with Eminem. And I think that this has become normalized. Being obsessed with people that we don't know, we have no personal stake in, no personal relationship, is okay now. And I think that's really messed up. I'm not a huge fan of people segmenting their life off so they can build fan pages for Robert Downey Jr. or Anthony Mackie or Sebastian Stan. Like, I see a lot of accounts on Instagram and on Twitter where people are just fans of these characters and all they do is just post photos of them. And sure, there could be a business reason behind that. They could be trying to, drive up traffic and monetize it at some point. But it just, I don't think it's the healthiest practice. I really don't.
I don't know. I don't have an issue with that. That's not something I'm really like into myself. Maybe, a couple of years ago I would have been, but not even then, not really. But those people who are like actually just really big fans, I don't think those are the issues because they're very like loving. Like you may say like sometimes like they're young, it's a phase. Sometimes maybe it's not, but I don't really have an issue with those fan pages or them just appreciating them and just being like, oh, it's like how you said, like people who like the same soccer club or whatever, like just going out. My thing is like the ownership of the person, and also this is something you mentioned because I think this has a lot to do with like celebrity culture. And I see this a lot is people like standing celebrities and then they can do no wrong and they'll like defend people they don't even know in like weird
True.
situations. And I'm like, you don't
Yeah.
even know this person, like,
Yeah.
in like that respect, I'm not okay with it. Like their fan pages, like I just think like, okay, these people really like them, and they're just because I've seen some and they're just like posting photos like we love you, like, or like advertising their new things. Like honestly, like some of these do a lot like of advertising for them actually. So
Do you guys remember that YouTube star, the guy that was screaming about Britney Spears underneath his sheet? You guys remember that guy?
Yeah, say the leave Britney alone guy.
Yeah, leave Britney alone. That guy. He built an entire life around defending Britney Spears.
I feel like a lot of people that's like a whole movement.
We've commoditized
there's a lot of
this.
people who are like
We've
obsessed with
commoditized
her.
it. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I just feel like people should have their own lives. And listen, I'm not one to get starstruck by really anybody. There's probably like 3 people I could count where I would actually probably lose my shit. But like, I've met Jackie Chan and I just was like, oh, it's Jackie Chan. Hey, what's up? I've met Famke Janssen, the woman who played Jean Grey, and I was just like, oh, it's Jean Grey. Can I get a photo? Cool, awesome. But like like celebrity doesn't really faze me at all. Maybe maybe it's just an alien concept to me. I don't know, but like I don't get why people get so obsessed with this shit. Christina, you were saying something when I was talking about the extent of like how obsessed we get with actors and actresses. You were saying something before.
Yeah, so I think my opinion on this is just in girls, it's not a behavior that's discouraged. In fact, it's encouraged. And if we
Good
look at like boy bands,
Yeah.
right? It's like a marketing machine.
It's
like
a total
boy bands,
marketing machine.
young man actors, they want little girls to be obsessed with the characters and the actors and the singers.
Yep.
And they even create all these magazines that kind of tell you to behave that way or encourage that kind of behavior and kind of mold these young women at this
Good
young
point.
age to kind of like, okay, between the ages of 8 and 16, it's going to be really cool to like be obsessed with like all these characters, and here's all the merchandise we can throw at you to fulfill your obsession or whatever. Yeah, and I would say it's probably the same for guys. I remember like lots of men would have posters of all the actresses from things like Baywatch and I don't know, Charlie's Angels. I'm not thinking of the
Back
best
in the
example.
70s, maybe.
Spring.
What the
Yeah.
fuck? Jesus
Help
Christ.
me
Yeah.
out here.
I don't know. So here's my thing, because I guess I didn't grow up too much in boy band. I guess when I was little, there was like Backstreet Boys. I guess growing up, my thing like One Direction and like the Jonas Brothers were. Oh, I did
They
like
were
the Jonas Brothers.
huge.
Now
In
that I
fact, for me, it was
remember.
like Backstreet
Like,
Boys,
going back.
Spice Girls, NSYNC. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, for me, the reason why I don't have an issue with it is maybe because I was maybe one of those fans. Like, so when I think about like the K-pop boy band that I liked back when I was younger, I'm still young. I don't know why I age myself like that. But anyway, the one that when I think about like the K-pop boy band that I liked, like honestly, I would watch their videos and it would just like make me happy, and I would like watch like shows with them in it every now and then, and it would just like make me smile. Like I wasn't like I really enjoy them. I would say I was probably a stan, and it just like brought a smile to my face. And like after a while, like I kind of grew out of it. I do still have their concert DVDs, which I made my dad watch with me. He's a really great dad for doing that because he was probably like, "What is this?" But I just know that it made me happy. Like that's all I can remember really of that time. I do think there probably is like a greater obsession that you can have than that you feel ownership, because I know for K-pop especially, like dating, like I know that if you are caught with like a girlfriend or boyfriend, like you lose so many of your fans, like because it's like just the ownership that they feel over it. So I do think there are extremes to it, but in Western stuff, I wouldn't really say these people care if they date as much. But yeah, I don't know, because I guess I'm coming from another side, from remembering really being a fan of them and just being like happy to see them.
How many people do you think are aware that this stan connotation is linked to this cautionary tale from Eminem?
Can I tell you something? Probably not a lot.
That's fucked up.
Probably,
that is so fucked up.
I don't think it is, because words change meaning all the time.
That's true.
You know,
That's
or
true.
the intent, like, you know, like a lot of these people, like I remember the Eminem song now.
Mhm.
I mean, I did remember when you brought it up. I didn't realize it came from there originally. But if you were born like a little bit after me, I would say you probably wouldn't maybe even know that song.
True. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. I do have one more funny story
Go
that
ahead.
I want to share on this. So just in relation to girls being fed this like bubblegum pop kind of pop culture thing. I remember being young, maybe like 10, and of course everyone was obsessed with the Backstreet Boys back then, and all my friends kept being like, which Backstreet Boy do you love? Like, which one do you love? And I was like, I wasn't really into boys yet. Like, I was still wanting to just run around and play soccer and tag, but they made me pick, and I was like, oh, I guess Brian. And then, so for my birthday that year, they gave me a framed photograph of his face.
Wow. Okay.
That's such a girl thing
Okay.
to
It was
do.
Oh
so
my God.
weird,
Can
though.
I tell you
it was like
something?
a personal photo. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
poster. It
Oh
looked like
my
something
God.
like from his personal photo collection. It wasn't signed. It was just like so weird. And I found
Okay,
it years
but-
later. It was just so creepy. I'm like, why do I have this? I have to get rid of this. This
Wow.
is so
No, but
strange.
girls definitely do that, because I was really into Zac Efron, and I got a Zac Efron poster from one of my friends.
Poster's like one thing, but
Yeah,
this
poster's
photo that
one
looks like
thing,
it's
too.
just
This is a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, I
Holy
guess
shit.
so.
Wow. Yeah, you know, like, yes, I had posters on my wall, like, definitely, of like a list. Like, dude, we're going down a time warp here. I had like Alyssa Milano, I had Demi Moore at one point, like definitely, you know, I had posters, but it was never to the point where I actually wrote anybody a letter. I don't think I wrote anybody a letter. No, definitely didn't write anybody a letter. But like, it just, I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to speak to this because of the time that I grew up in. I didn't have this access to celebrities and to directors and writers and all these people that I have admiration for the way that this generation does. Well, now I do, but maybe I'm just at the age where it just doesn't matter to me as much anymore. You know, maybe it's a thing that you kind of evolve out of. I don't know. But anyways, you know, I would like to see the term stan go away though. Like, because if anybody calls me a stan about anything, I'm going to lose my crap. Like, that's going to happen. Because it doesn't.
But I think that's because of your association with it.
It's
I
totally
didn't
because
think
of my
about that
association with
until
it.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually never really heard of this term before either. This was like kind
Wow.
of the first that I've heard of it.
And
so,
it's,
yeah.
you know, it's being popularized and commoditized in other media. Like, I've heard the word stan being used in The Boys. I've heard the word stan being used in a number of different sitcoms. And I don't want that to become like, it's okay to be obsessed with things. That's not a good thing to teach people, because I almost feel like it's glorifying it, right? But again, it's my
agree.
frame of reference, right? It's my frame of reference. It's the way that I'm seeing it. So maybe the people who are using it on a more regular basis, they don't understand that this is a reference to this song about a guy that is so obsessed with Eminem that he kills himself and his girlfriend. Because I don't think that's anything that anybody should be glorifying. That's my take. I don't know. But anyways. So the next notion I wanted to explore is fan fiction. Okay. I think fan fiction has played a huge role in contributing to this sense of authorship and ownership that fans have over their favorite characters, their favorite actors, their favorite actresses. And I wanted to kind of get your guys' feedback on that. Do you think that fan fiction has contributed to this sense of entitlement?
I think perhaps in some ways, but I don't know if the people who are kind of the ones writing the fan fiction are also these like negative troll people on the internet.
No.
When you read fan fiction, it usually comes from a place of love and just people who are just obsessed with the characters and could take the characters in kind of any direction. And I guess my most direct connection to that is my brother really liked writing his own Marvel movies. And he would do these like elaborate scripts for like Avengers movies, but they were so entertaining. It was fun to read. And yeah,
When did your brother do that?
I don't know. He just really liked comics, and he read a lot of comics, so he just like knew a lot about the characters. And just while waiting for all these Avengers movies to come out, he kind of just made his own in the meantime. So yeah.
So I've been a pretty avid fan fiction reader for a lot of my life. I don't think that's any secret to anyone who listens to the
Right.
podcast. And one of my first forays into that was probably like Harry Potter fan fiction. I think that was like a lot of people, maybe. I think Harry Potter fan fiction really did kick off a lot of that. But I will say, I don't know if that's the case because a lot of the, some fan fiction's good, some fan fiction's bad. But a lot of what I've seen of them and a lot of fan fiction people have like Tumblr associated, it is coming from a loving place. There is, and Harry Potter is probably a very specific one where I do find the community actually very loving and more open than even the author at times. So maybe that's an interesting.
Ouch.
I mean, it had to be said. But there are, I guess, because we can create these stories and share these stories, we want them to go a certain way. I could see it from that angle. I know, for example, Game of Thrones there's a lot of Game of Thrones fan fiction out there that was written after this last season came out of how they wanted the season to go. So I can see it as like a response to something. It's like, this didn't work out the way we wanted to. Let's write this story and like let's do it that way. Like I said, like Christina said, I don't know what like the Venn diagram or the intersection is of like trolls and everything else. Yeah, I don't know how much ownership extra it does because I feel like people could have done stuff like this without the internet and share it. I know like back in the day, like LiveJournal was what I heard was like the first one to do it, and then it kind of like spread from there. But
And
yeah,
I know there were like little forums prior to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It predates the internet, guys. I just want to make it
Yeah.
very clear. It predates the internet. Like, there were nerds writing Star Trek fan fiction like in the 60s and in the 70s
So-
because they were so into it, right? And I'm sure that there was guys in the 70s writing Star Wars. As soon as they left that theater, they were like, "Oh my God, I love Chewbacca. I love that character. Let me go back and write a whole thing about him with him and his family." And it turned
Okay,
into
I was
the
like,
Christmas
okay,
special.
where is this going?
No, but like, no, I'm just trying to say that, fan fiction does predate the internet, but I think that the internet is obviously the mechanism or the tool. The amount of fan fiction has reached almost critical mass with the advent of the internet. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying.
And I don't know if anyone here has ever played The Sims, but have you ever stepped into like a sim world that was created by a really obsessive fan? Like you can kind of download people's sim worlds and go into them and
What?
yeah.
Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, you can create like people create like different sim worlds and characters, and you
Ah.
can go on their website and like download it, and so you can like play in that world. I've heard of that.
So
That's
I was kind of
interesting.
obsessed with The Sims, and then I did sometimes like go look at like what people were creating in relation to certain fandoms, and yeah, it got really like crazy, and they must have spent so much
Wow.
time. There's just people who spent like all their time just like designing chairs and clothing and skins to make these characters look like the people they love, and then they would create stories out of them. And I would say sometimes those get dark. Like I've seen the stories created with those types of Sims. They create like dark, like
I mean, Sim always
Yeah.
gets dark. Sim's like literally playing that game to me, like I always stop playing that game with like an existential crisis of like, am I a Sim?
so I feel like that game gets really dark, and like the stories that people create with those characters. So I could picture maybe some of those people being trolls if we're trying to figure out like who the troll fans are. Maybe those like Sim lovers.
You guys
then
know
another,
we're trying
like-
to walk the line of respecting artistry and trying to address obsession at the same time. Like, you guys, this is a very delicate walk the line situation because we're talking about Sims, and the way that I kind of see what you're talking about, Christina, is just somebody's artistic expression of how they see or how they want to see the world or how they want to see their version of the Sims world or whatever it is, right? So,
Oh,
and
sure.
it's
So usually there's an artist, but then people can play with those downloaded skins, and it's the people who create the stories from those where it gets like really dark and like kind of nuts.
Oh, because anyone can do whatever they want. So it is
Yeah,
in terms like
yeah.
kind of like fan fiction. I will say that I've read some like amazing fan fiction. I've read some like not so great fan fiction. But there's some like sometimes like when I read fan fiction, I'm like, why are you like not making this a book? of your own. I had a friend who read a lot of Lord of the Rings fan fiction.
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings is just like more stories that take place in that world,
Mhm.
which, there's a lot of that happens as well. And so there's some like really great stuff out there. I think that, yeah, I don't really know if that has much to do with it because of the predating of everything. I think it's like people creating, their own story of this thing that they love. And if I was to write something and it got its own fan fiction, like people were writing fan fiction about it, I'd be like, damn, I made it. I'm here. This is it.
Yeah.
Well,
And then also, like, how do you guys feel about like Lego movies? I feel like those are just kind of like a homage or kind of like fan fiction esque as well.
no, I think they are.
And there's also
No,
like
yeah.
places on the internet where you can create your own stop motion Lego movies and stuff too. So
No, I think that's cool
but-
as shit. Like we're talking again. We're trying to balance what an acceptable. Well, no, I don't want to term it acceptable because I'm trying to. That's me telling people what's okay and what's not. What I'm trying to say is that there needs to be a certain line that people just don't cross. You know what I'm saying? And
because I really love Lego Batman. He's kind of freaking hilarious.
but with the fan fiction idea, I think we've seen it cross the line a couple times though, because there's a lot of fan fiction writers who have tried to, or self-identified fan fiction writers, or maybe even just speculative who knows, but they've tried to use the stories that exist in fan fiction to try and get Marvel and DC to make certain decisions with their characters, or Star Wars. Like there was this huge push for Poe and for Finn to be gay lovers.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I will say that, okay, that was a push, but
It
people
was
were going to watch the movie
huge,
regardless.
Saba.
But that is
The
something
push was
fan fiction
gigantic.
like
It was a
to
tidal
do.
wave. It was a fucking tidal wave on Twitter where it was just like, why can't they be gay lovers? Because, Poe bit his lip. That's a gay relationship right there.
I mean, Poe has he has sexual tension with a freaking wall. I think I saw a tweet like that once, and I was like, I agree.
Yeah, he's like a
I agree
walking
with that too.
hormone.
I agree
Yeah,
with that too. No, if I was gonna no, but it's
So
like,
fan fiction has a tendency to make a lot of things gay, and I
Yes,
don't mean
they
that
do.
any other way. Because
Yes,
we
they
know,
do.
me and Christina know someone who was obsessed with Captain America and Bucky fan fiction, right, Christina?
Yeah.
We won't mention her name, but she
I
is.
was gonna say, was it Chris?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, come on, Jeff. This is supposed to be between us all.
you're not supposed to out Chris on the show,
But
Jeff. What are you
like
doing?
just like
Come
a
on.
huge obsession, and that like you find that a lot in fan fiction, which I don't even like. Hey, it's weird when they do the actual actors. That's where I see it crosses line. I've seen like very small cases like that. I think it's more prevalent in actually K-pop, where they'll make their like favorite people, and then it'll be the actual person and not just the character. Then I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, if anything, I found that more funny.
Yeah, I feel like it makes sense because they don't get representation for their. You don't see too many things in fandom that have gay lead characters. So
Yeah, but Christina, we're talking about taking two existing heterosexual characters and just basically turning them on a dime and being like,
I understand.
you guys do it. Let's go. Come
yeah,
on.
I
Let's do it."
understand that. So the fans are basically expressing their want for that. So I really hope that creators
And that's
kind
what my
of
point is
recognize
about the
that
advocacy.
and tap into
Yeah.
it in something else. And obviously they
Right.
didn't do it because it didn't make sense for this storyline.
Right.
But I really
Well, no, that and Disney. But
Yeah.
that's my point. I think that you kind of have these things dovetailing, right? You have fan fiction writers who are growing up in a generation where they can pretty much say or write whatever they want. They can create their own headcanons in whatever manner that they want. And you got that dovetailing in a very strong climate of social justice advocacy and activism where people can get online and basically whine loud enough about something with maybe even no legitimate reason to complain about something, but use the momentum of a like-minded mob to get their way. And I think that we're seeing that. I think we're seeing a lot of that, right? But
I would love to see a gay love story in Star Wars. That would be amazing.
I'm okay with that. That's fine, but create two new characters. Like, I hate when they
Yeah.
do that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, Saba, me and you, we talked about this Young Justice moment ad nauseum with that young gentleman that we met at a fan expo who was dressed as Calderon. We talked about, transitioning this character because Calderon was
Mhm.
a straight character and he had a girlfriend. And then all of a sudden he's kissing this other Atlantean guy. in this like very small cutscene at the end of Young Justice. And we asked this guy, and he was gay himself. And he's like, it didn't make any sense. Like, there's no pretext. There's no lead up.
Oh, did he say? I don't remember. I remember him. He had very beautiful
I'm
eyes.
sure you do.
I don't remember
him. He was a handsome dude. I can say that. Yeah.
Did he say that? They interviewed. This was like, I think like a year and a half ago. But yeah, so the context for that, I don't really know, because that wasn't really fans asking for that though. You know?
No, it wasn't fans asking for that. But but again, it's just an example of how things kind of turn on a dime. But you're right. Fans didn't ask for that. But like,
but also, I don't know if that was his there's different like orientations on like, on the whole spectrum of it all. So,
Oh, no, he told us he was gay.
Pardon?
He told us he was gay.
No, I'm talking about Calderon.
Oh.
Calderon never told me nothing.
But the point I'm trying to make is that, we live in a world where a lot of things dovetail because of the internet, right? A lot of things are dovetailing because of the internet right now. Like, you can really raise any point you want about any subject matter. And like I said, you're going to be able to find somebody like-minded to basically dogpile with you to make sure that your point gets across. It doesn't really matter how crazy your point is. Like, look what's happening with COVID. People are finding each other on the internet because they don't believe the science. They don't think that COVID even actually exists, right? And that's just a small indication of like how quickly these pockets of people can grow on the internet and to turn momentum into actual action, which is kind of crazy. And speaking of fans and advocacy, look what happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? That's a perfect example of what fans can achieve when they get online together and they try and make something happen. And that's a positive example of, actually, yes, I'm gonna label it as a positive example of obsession, because that was an obsession. Like, I'm not trying to say it negatively, but these people not only spent money on billboards, but plane banners, bus shelters. These people really wanted to see this movie. And I'd like to think in my own headcanon that they wanted to give an artist another shot at bringing his vision to reality. And they wanted to see that movie. That's where my head's at. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you can't. And so you're talking about like people going on the internet and like with that whatever corner they want, sort of staying and believing whatever they want with like-minded people. You can't really like kill an idea, once it exists, it's out there. And that's like with the advent of the internet and in this modern age, the good and the bad behind it. And I think creators now, they need to be cognizant of what they're doing, and then also figure out how to create in this new landscape. Because I think a lot of fans out there are just like us, who people are just really want to enjoy what is being produced. And, we have our criticism sometimes, that's fine. I do think the Twitter of it all makes it seem bigger than it is sometimes, I wonder. I know that these mobs are crazy. I do understand that there's this whole thing going on. But as for the Snyder example, Frank, I do think it can be seen as positive, but it can also seem like as over obsessive again, because we were explaining like standing like artists that people like, actors and such. But like, these people were putting, like you said, money behind billboards and everything else. And I'm glad that we kind of got this, and it shows that fans can sort of achieve these things. But I wonder if that can also be seen as a bad example to other people who don't like something and are like, well, we can just do this thing now. You know what I mean? Like, are they setting a precedent now in terms of? No,
they set a precedent. Yes. Yeah. Because people fail to see things with nuance now, right? Like I just made, I think I made an argument that is logical, because I think a lot of the fans that came to Zack Snyder's defense about getting this movie made, it was more motivated about the fact of what actually happened to Zack during production. And they wanted to see a director realize his vision of his project. I think that was a big part of it. But I think that you'll see a large fan base say something along the lines of like, oh, like, this is going to set up, like you were saying, it's going to set a precedent where anybody can just do this now. They can just be like, oh, well, I want you to reshoot The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker now. If you're going to reshoot fucking, if you're going to do reshoots for Zack Snyder's Justice League, why can't you do all of Star Wars again?
I think that's different though,
So do I.
because at least
That's what I'm trying to say. I
'cause,
think
like,
it's
it
very
deepens,
different,
yeah.
but I do think it does set a precedent. It does open a door that was not open before.
You must be very entitled to think that though.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably would
Yeah.
have to be.
Yeah, like that could.
I also think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff.
No,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I also think that there's a marketing opportunity there, and I think they're just capitalizing on the marketing opportunity, and that's why it's happening. So I could see these kinds of things happening again if there's a business opportunity to take advantage of that mainstream kind of alternative opinion of how something should have been done or redone. But yeah, unless there's a business reason behind it, I don't see that coming to fruition again.
Yeah, the circumstances kind of have to be the same. There's an original, like something happened, then it wasn't the original.
Yeah, no,
like,
you're right.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to make something completely new if there
You're
wasn't
right,
an
Jeff,
original
but
thing,
common
right?
sense isn't so common right now, right? And
It's true.
like,
Yeah.
you know, and Sub, I want to get your take on this too, but I don't think everybody can atomize the issue like that and say, okay, well, you know what? The director was taken off the project earlier than he was, so he should have the opportunity to complete it. I think people will just look at it on the surface and say, oh, it's a movie that I really wanted to get made that didn't get made the way that I want it, so now I want you to go and do it the way that I want it, right? I don't know. Saba, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's like the fear. I do think that, you know, the Snyder one was like a specific case, but I do think it can be like assigned to other fans from other sort of fandoms when they don't like something and being like, oh, we can get them to redo it without them really kind of knowing all the facts behind it. I don't think, you know, it will be possible maybe. You know, I don't like it costs a lot of money and it's like a big undertaking. Like when people were saying, redo the final season of Game of Thrones. And I remember watching the behind the scenes documentary of Game of Thrones of all the hours they put into the sets and the work and everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, they can't redo that. Like, you know, there's just that's not you just gotta accept it and move on. So yeah, in that sense, I do think that it might give some fans
I,
that idea that can be done. And I don't really know if that's always right. Like there is a right circumstance for it maybe sometimes. And then, you know, I think most of the time you gotta move on.
I think what we also see sometimes is a reboot of a series that had a large fan base, and someone says, you know what, I could have written that better. And then they do it. They write it better and they pitch the idea, and the idea gets published. I think that's like the kind of positive spin on that I wouldn't mind seeing. So
Yeah, you know what?
yeah.
This could lead to more of a democratization of entertainment, which I think is a good idea. And the only reason I do think that is a good idea is a much more bigger issue, which we actually have a future episode planned for. Because what we're seeing is that there are certain social missions that are kind of overtaking the importance of storytelling right now. And not that I don't want those things to be balanced. I do want those things to be balanced, but I think it's almost at an over course correction right now. But yeah, we got episodes coming up to talk about that. This dovetails perfectly because we're talking about Snyder and we're talking about the fans being able to achieve this unprecedented, monumental, like, we're going to get a film made that wasn't, we're going to get this film reshot the way that it was meant to be shot, for the director that was meant to be directed by. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. The question I want to ask you guys is, are we being spoiled by recent fan service? Like, is it just too much? Like, are we like basically being spoon-fed everything that we've wanted out of all the canons that we drool over?
Yeah, but I mean, it's what we want. So I don't see.
That's not what I want, dude. That's not what
I
I
enjoy
want.
it. So like, I don't really
That's
see
not what
a
I want.
huge problem with it, but that's just me.
Yeah, but like, there's, the old saying, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Yeah, there can also be. I don't know. I feel like there could be more, and it'd make it a lot worse. I don't think they're going overboard.
Well, I don't know, man. Star Wars was the whole pile of fan service that didn't satisfy any of the fans, if you ask me.
Star Wars was on a huge drop ever since Phantom Menace. Let's be real here.
Since Phantom, I don't know about that, dude. Sorry, but
Well, each of those other Star Wars franchises does have its own fans. So people who like Disney like the new Star Wars movies.
True.
So they did kind of tap into a fan base.
But,
it's not maybe the original fan base, but it's a fan base.
Yeah, but you got to argue that the Rise of Skywalker was like fan service for original trilogy people, like without a doubt.
But I don't think it was for, and this is because we're going into Star Wars now. I really don't feel like it was fan service for the original, only because so many people watching it had never seen it before, and it was their first foray into it. Like my nieces and nephew, when they watched, like that was the first time they saw. Really, I mean, well, they actually, because my brother made them watch the other one first. But like for the most part, like their modern day, were like I think a lot of people that was their first time. But in terms of fan service and getting everything that we want, I don't really know. Are we getting everything that we want? Let me think. I'm trying to think. Like I
don't know. I think we are, dude. I really do. Like.
Well, you're getting super pets, Saba.
You're right. That's right. Okay, I got everything I wanted.
Like
you're right.
Like
no argument.
Like there's literal articles where they will identify fan service now. Like you can go on a website and be like, oh, this is a fan service moment. 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 Right? You know, and I think that's something that should be examined, because if you give people too much of what they want, they're not going to stop asking for it. It's not a good thing to do, right?
Yeah, but this is how genres of things are born.
No, genres, the best genres in the history of the world were made by creators. Stan Lee didn't send out a questionnaire in 1960 and be like, hey guys, what do you want Spider-Man to be like?
But I don't know if that's the case. So like if you use the Spider-Man as the example, like in the movies, like the Spider-Man that Tom Holland is not the one that I expected.
Oh no, I'm not saying Spider-Man is a fan service example. Christina was making a point about fan service is what's going to build a strong franchise, right? I was making the point that if you look back in history, we don't see Stan Lee consulting with fans. We don't see George Lucas consulting with fans to try and design these worlds, right? They were just created, and we love them nonetheless. Right? Even though we have no input into them at all, they're beloved, right? So maybe this isn't the right direction.
Well, all these TV shows, they're based on fandoms that already exist. They're not new. They're not creative. It's just, so that's the reason why they're trying to like do their market research and find out what it is that the fans of these fandoms are looking for, right? And what will they...
Market research is one thing, right? Market research is a whole different thing than fan service. Market research is like understanding who your audience is and, you know, what type of characters they're, you know, they will identify with.
I would argue that The Mandalorian is fan service, like the whole show.
The Mandalorian is literally like a fan service hand job. Yes. Like that's exactly what The Mandalorian season was. Not that it wasn't good, but it was over the top fan service. That's exactly what it was. Jon Favreau was basically like, how can I, you know, jerk off every OT fan in the entire world?
It was also like, what can we create for Disney Plus that's going to make people purchase Disney Plus? Yeah, I have an idea.
Yeah, Baby Yoda. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. But okay, the question here is, are we spoiled? Yes or no? Let's go around the table. I say yes.
I say no.
I say no. Christina, you're next.
I say no. I think this is business. I don't think it's us being spoiled. I think it's business being done based on a large market of people willing to purchase things.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So you just think that they're opting to play up to the marketing information that they have, their data or whatever. Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, so last notion I wanted to touch on. Is toxic fandom just a byproduct of the normalization of cancel shoutdown culture?
I do think that there is. So here's my thing. And someone used this term, I don't know who, but they said something about like consequence culture, consequence. I do believe that oftentimes, especially people, you know, in media and stuff, have gone away with a lot of like shitty things, and there is no consequence to it, and there are things that need to be, in a sense, shut down. And I think it's been going on for years and years, and people just don't say things about it. And I think that is a really wonderful thing that people are doing, where they feel like they can speak out and be like, this happened, and instead of that person just getting more and more power. Really extreme examples like Harvey Weinstein, like, you know, this guy that everyone knew was awful but couldn't do anything about until, the whole like movement came about. I think that is awesome. I don't think it's awesome when it's leveraged toward one particular person. And, like I do think there's obviously an extreme. I think people need to be held accountable, but I do think that the mob mentality is not going to work on changing anyone's mindset.
Okay. But is it do you think it's a byproduct? Because if you look at the timelines and when these things emerged, they emerged at almost the exact same time. When things started to get out of control with fans basically, sending out death threats to people, it started around cancel culture. It started around Gamergate. It started around Comicsgate, right? And it definitely dovetails with the inception of cancel and shoutdown culture. So is it a byproduct of the normalization of cancel and shoutdown culture?
I mean, it very well could be. I mean, yeah, that does make sense in terms of, yeah, like this has become the norm. And also, like, this type of behavior is just the norm on how you act on the internet, it seems these days, Like, it just does seem like this is the way things are done, or to get noticed in any sort of way, at least with, like, hateful fans, I guess.
Yeah, I think, so the way that I see things is it's almost like the other side of the coin, right? You've got one side of, let's say, define it by, one side of the aisle, where they're using their power, their public advocacy, their platforms to point out injustices. And then you've got another side where they're just basically trying to use the same tactics, the same approach, the same attitude towards getting what they want. It's almost like this level of vitriol and nastiness has almost been normalized across the entire internet. And it's just like, it's okay. I can do it because other fucking people are doing it. Nobody's leading by example. And it's just like, it's okay now. Like, I can make death threats on the internet. People do it all the time now. Right? Like it's, yeah. Go ahead, Christina.
I have a different opinion on this too. I think toxic fandom existed before cancel or shoutdown culture, but I do think that there is kind of like a push and pull between those two things. And
can you give me an example though? Because that's
So I think toxic fandom, especially in the 90s, maybe for female video gamers, a lot of females who played video games would get harassed while playing these video games. And people would argue with them and say like, oh, you're not a real fan or whatever. Or if you went to a comic book store and you were a girl, same thing. You might get bullied or kind of have certain characters mansplained to you.
So boys club. It was just, there was
it always felt like a boys club.
Gatekeepers. There was gatekeepers.
Yeah. And there was...
I won't disagree with that.
There's a girl who calls herself Fake Nerd Girl. And she actually kind of talks about her experiences with that. And she's kind of like, she does this comedic / I don't know, one woman show, and it's kind of hilarious. I've seen it. So yeah, I guess that's just one person kind of expressing her experiences with that. But I think it is relatable. I think a lot of girls may have experienced that sort of thing growing up, especially if you didn't grow up in today's day and age. Like maybe if you grew up in a time that wasn't as equal. And I think we still see that. I think fandom is still a little bit patriarchal, more white dominated, more male dominated, more straight people dominated. So I think that...
Well, that's representative to their market size though too, right? Like that's representative to the paying market.
Yeah,
like it's directly representative of the paying market.
I think it's something there's always been kind of like a push for diversity, and it's come in like different waves and different stages and phases, right? And it's been in relation to the political climate that we see. Mm-hmm. So I think those two things have always been
on white.
So
yeah.
Well, I can tell you from a guy's point of view, there are gatekeepers for guys too. Like in the gaming world, if you weren't a good gamer, you would get harassed. You would get fucking bullied on voice chat if you were shit.
Sure, yeah.
That's just...
No, but legit, like I get gatekeeping. Like I remember there was a coworker, and this is something different. We talked about basketball, and I'm a big fan of basketball. And the first thing he's like, well, name me the 4. And this happened like actually a couple months ago, before COVID started actually. He was like, name me 4 of like these players on this thing. And I literally looked at him and I said, no. I'm like, I'm not playing your game. I'm not doing this kind of thing. But the gatekeeping thing I will say for video games and stuff and anime, not as much anime, before video games growing up. And I also think it depends on the fandom, because like I'm a really big fan of anime, and Jeff, I know you watch a lot of anime too, and I don't feel like we have that in anime.
Everybody loves each other. Everybody loves each other. That's what I see.
Right, Jeff? Like,
I don't know. There's a very toxic community in anime as well.
Is there really?
There is.
Yes.
There is for sure. And are you talking about like otakus and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, there is for sure of that, but I don't feel like, I don't know, like in terms of like dictating stories or whatever else, or like the standing of it,
Yeah.
maybe, you know, like there is obviously a toxic in every, and you know, in every culture, but like I don't know, I want to see what's like from fandom to fandom, because for the most part, like Harry Potter has its ins and outs, but a lot of the Harry Potter fans or fans that I meet are like really great, awesome people, you know, like just kind of really cool, nice. And I feel like that fandom, I mean, there's probably moments that I'm not recalling, but I feel like it doesn't get like that. So I wonder if it's a representation of like what the actual thing the person is sort of fanning over, or like what the fandom is.
I read an interesting article actually too in Medium that argued the reason why people are so passionate about their fandoms is because we've replaced things like religion and politics with our love of our fandom. So, you know, maybe we're not practicing our religions and we're kind of apathetic towards politics, but instead we're kind of like
apathetic.
Some people, not everyone, but definitely the younger generations, I think. And I think,
I don't know, the younger generation, I would say these days are not apathetic towards politics.
Yeah, not at all.
But in terms of
okay, let's say religion, right? Let's just say religion.
Yeah.
Because that's what they discuss in the Medium article.
Religion for sure.
But in terms of religion, and they're replacing religion with fandom, and that's why they get so into it and so aggressive about it, I guess.
Well, speaking of politics, that's definitely something we're going to discuss on an upcoming episode, because I see politics and the dovetailing of fandom almost being advantageous. And let me make this point, and I want to hear Jeff's thoughts on whether he kind of sees this byproduct thing that I'm talking about. I kind of see fandom and politics intersecting because fandom is the loudest thing in entertainment right now, right? The biggest budget movies are comic book films. They are franchise films. They are Harry Potter films, right? And when you're part of a political group, when you're part of a movement, you want to find the place where you get the most amplification. And I think that, and this argument's been made 1,000 times, by a lot of people in Comicsgate, that they chose this platform because of its popularity. They chose this platform to send these messages because of how much it's consumed. Like, its market viability. And I think that there's an argument to that, but I do want to explore that in a future episode. So stay tuned for that. But Jeff, I wanted to get your take on this whole idea as whether this is a byproduct of this other side of our culture, which is this shout down cancel culture. Do you think that and you know what? I hate the fact that we've called it toxic fandom. There's not really anything else to call it. I'm going to call it bad fans or whatever, but like, do you think it's a byproduct or no?
Definitely. I mean, it's always been there, but like definitely with the whole cancel culture and everything like that, it's amplified toxic fandom for sure. I don't agree with it in any shape or form, but honestly, I don't think it's going anywhere. It's just how society is these days, and it's a terrible thing to say, but it's just how it is. People are toxic, and I don't think that type of mentality is ever going to change.
Do you guys think it's just the fact that it's a platform where we're just disconnected emotionally and there's no real connection to the people that we're talking to? Like, it's just 100%. Like, yeah, okay.
100%.
Yeah, me too.
Like, honestly, I always
sure.
say, like, I prefer to like fight you face to face. I will not, like, I won't say a bad thing about you online, but like, but I just like, I find it so interesting. Not that I'm actually fighting people, but I just find it so interesting that, like, how dissociative we get with, we don't even realize there's another person. Because a lot of these people would not say these things in real life. You would not go up to an actor that you like, and just in the middle of nowhere and be like, I hate you, like, you're this, you like are this or whatever else. Like, you just wouldn't do it. You know, some of them
Yeah.
probably would.
It's not normalized. It's happened, but it's definitely not normal.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe this was what happens if we live in a world without consequences. Because kind of online, there's very little consequence
Yeah,
to the
there's
things
no
you say
accountability.
and
when you're
do.
hiding. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
like, you're hiding behind a screen. You face no accountability. You can say whatever you want, and nothing really
Yep.
bad happens to you. So people think it's okay, and then it just continues, and it's just a terrible thing.
Let's say you do get people who kind of act like warriors and try to find the people who are responsible for these kinds of comments and out them. But that can also be toxic because sometimes they find the wrong target and then some innocent person like is getting questioned at work because of something they potentially did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And going back to Saba's point at the top of the, like at the mid of the show, I want to say, we were thinking about the quality of life that these people are leading, right? I think that's another thing that we need to be very cognizant of, is that these people just aren't, they're not happy. They're not happy with who they are. They're not happy about their own lives. They're not happy about their job. They don't feel fulfilled. They need something. And maybe this is catharsis for them. That sounds fucked up, but maybe it is catharsis for them. That doesn't make it okay, but maybe that is catharsis. And I think that's a bigger issue that needs to be addressed, is why are people using the internet in these ways?
I mean, there's a big like, issue in terms of, and that's, you touched on it with like the Bell Talk Day, but like with, mental illness, and not even just mental illness, but like depression, which, falls underneath that. And especially in like COVID time, when people might be even feeling more isolated than they usually are. That's not me condoning anything, because, my thing is, I feel like everyone, goes through things in their life and shit in their life, and it's really horrible and sucky. But I think, what the avenues that some people find in terms of releasing that is not the most healthiest, and it's not healthy for anyone. It's not healthy for the person receiving it or for them, because, I'm really a big believer in sort of the idea of karma, in the sense that the energy you put out in the world is the energy you kind of get back. If you are someone who is,
Yep.
it's not, you have to be about good vibes all the time, but your idea is like, I want to bring more good into the world than I do bad, then, I would hope and I would feel that people would see that, and you would kind of get some of that in return. The opposite, I think, is also true. But like you said, I do think a lot of these people do need to maybe reach out and talk to somebody, and that's not always the case. Like, we could be projecting. There are some people who are just like shit disturbers and just make like comments just to make comments and be like, you suck.
Trolls,
Like, I hate
totally,
this. Like,
yeah.
whatever. There's plenty of people that
Yeah.
are like that as well. And those people in my head, I always picture like a 10-year-old boy. I don't know why, but that's like my image, with like their like headphones on and like a really like a voice that cracks, maybe. Like, that's just like my image, which is, yeah, but that's like my image of them. But yeah, I think, there's a lot of things that go into it, but I do know that fandom is more wonderful when, people come together
That's
and talk
awesome.
about things they like, and we can like criticize and be like, yeah, I didn't like that, I didn't like this, but, which is, I think, fine. Like, that's storytelling, that's, putting
100%.
stuff out there. But
Yep.
I think, yeah, it is better when we kind of come together just to share like a collective joy of what we love.
Just like we do on this podcast. That's what we're all about here, is coming together, talk about what we love without the name calling, without the bullshit. Obviously, we don't agree with each other. You've heard us disagree with each other multiple times on this episode. So, we're big advocates for the fact that you can have a disagreement with somebody and still be civilized. It's not tough. It's not hard. Yeah. So anyways, the last thing I wanted to touch on is, and I think this is the most important thing, is that there's definitely a line in that people shouldn't cross in fandom, and I think that's death threats. I think death threats on the internet is like the absolute, like, that's where everybody is just like, okay, you're literally breaking the law and you're threatening harm on somebody or trying to incite violence. I think those are extreme examples, right? But I think that, we've talked a lot about cancel culture in past episodes, and we've talked about shutdown culture, and we've talked about all that, but I really don't see the difference between a lot of these people. I see them all using the internet and trying to shout down or yell at people or to cancel people in a way, but they're just doing it from two different sides of the coin. And I think that it's important to distinguish that there's really no difference between a lot of these people. whether they're on the left or whether on the right or whether they're in the center. If you're acting like an asshole on the internet, you're an asshole on the internet.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I do really think it when it comes down to death threats, there's really not a need for that. That also is a very scary thing, especially if you're receiving multiple of that. Like I said, I'm for people like calling out people's behavior and stuff like that. I think, is something that can be done.
But I
yeah,
think there's a healthy way to do that, and there's an
Yeah,
unhealthy way to do that,
100%. And
Yeah.
death threats is definitely, death threats is just not the way to go. Also, with like Christina, you work in security. I feel like they would like flag that as well if you're doing like death threats on the internet.
Yeah. That's like a fun part of the job, actually. It's the kind of stuff I like working on sometimes. Only because it's interesting. Those kind of cases get really interesting. And but it's definitely, sorry not to like sound really excited about that, but there's definitely a person on the other end of that threat, and it's definitely not okay, and we shouldn't be condoning that. So I think anything that falls into the area of bullying and not just expressing your opinion, I think anything in that area should be not okay. We shouldn't be cyberbullying people as adults.
Yeah, I think I think that's an ideal that needs to be held across the ideological spectrum. It just can't be for one group or the other, or otherwise you're just, you're a fucking hypocrite. That's just the way things are. Like you can't condone a certain set of behavior from one party and then not, condemn the other side if they're behaving the exact same way, no matter what the end goal is. So that's my take on it. But anyways, this was a great episode, guys. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your feelings and your ideas and your notions. I really appreciate all the insight. My hope is that, and it's a very high hope, but my hope is that we can get back to talking to each other in a civilized manner. Our power for discourse has never been more important than it is now. Well, guys, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an excellent episode. We really appreciate you here, all your support. Hopefully the person who just won the Nintendo Switch is listening to this, because we just gave away a Nintendo Switch. We'll have more contests coming up, guys. So stay tuned for those. If you haven't already, please head over to Podchaser, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts and drop us a rate and review. All your feedback, we take that into consideration when we're trying to improve the show. So it's definitely helpful. So if you guys can share your thoughts, your feelings, any ideas, stuff you want to see for future shows, please do share that. And make sure that you're following us on Instagram at meanwhile_pod. Same thing on Twitter, meanwhile_pod. And meanwhile, look us up on YouTube at Meanwhile Back on the Podcast, and you can find our YouTube channel as well. We've got lots of content. We're going to be doing some more YouTube stuff in the near future. Lots of cool episodes coming up. Lots of more between pointed ears episodes coming up. We're having a great time doing this. We couldn't thank you enough for all your support, guys. It's been awesome. So we're going to sign off here. I'm Frank McGuire.
I'm Christina Dudumas.
I'm Seba Mir.
I'm Jeff Mack.
Till next time. Peace.